Good afternoon, everybody. Come on in. I think we got everyone. We just, no, not everyone.
Everyone that matters. Let's put it that way.
We all matter, Phil. We all matter. Hold on. This is all on me.
Oh, that's right. That's in the Declaration of, what do they call that thing? One of those documents.
Yeah, one of those documents that didn't apply to black people at first.
Oh, now come on. Don't start. Don't start.
You brought it up.
Hey, and it figures a Republican wouldn't really know what it says.
I was gonna say that, but I didn't want to start too early. I was going there though.
Tamaya, don't let him encourage you. All right, please.
I can't wait to hear what Kevin Eat the Rich Aldridge says about the Washington tax.
You know, Tamaya, I didn't find out you was gonna be on until late. If I'd have known that, I would have changed Voice of Reason. I say that every time. Next time you're gonna be on, I'm gonna change it.
I've been trying to change this Voice of Reason thing on him ever since we started this show.
I think he likes
in the interest of accuracy. That's the only reason.
Oh, because we know accuracy matters with you, Phil.
You're darn right it does.
There was some I don't know, I wouldn't call it an issue. Nothing that'll stop us from doing what we're doing, but something's happening with the chat. But we can see it on the screen, so that's all that matters. Just want to say hello to all the people who are in. I can't go to the beginning like I normally do, so I can only read what's on the screen right now. Dina, Nat, Terry, Brenda, Christelle, Huey. Tony Huey. Good to see you. Our crew members, Tony. He joined us last Friday. So hopefully that'll catch up. I've said every week, it seems like it is not a perfect science, so we'll figure it out along the way. We got Tamaya Dennard with us. Good to see you, Tamaya.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you for your time. We got Laketa Cole with us. Hey, Laketa. Thank you for your time today.
Hello.
And you already heard from Phil Heimlich, aka.
Well, we can hear from him again. But I got a question. There's a Sierra Brooks I often see in the chat. I'm asking Sierra, are you the same Sierra that's Tamara's daughter that goes to Crossroads Mason? My question.
Your question, okay.
Yes, yeah.
And of course, the voice of reason, Kevin Aldridge. How you doing, sir?
Happy Friday.
Yes. Ma'ams and sirs, thank you for being here and your time. I appreciate it. Hoping we'll go to about 2:30, maybe a little longer, but around that 2:30 window. So let's jump straight into it. A lot to talk about. And let's start with the Target boycott. Not sure if you're aware of it, but it is over, as declared by Pastor Jamal Bryant, who, and I'm not sure who elected him to be in charge of it, but he seemed to have been, a major player in it. And he is now declaring. He put a video out. Matter of fact, let me see if I can play that video for everybody, for those who are not aware of what we're talking about. Then we can all kind of be on the same page here. Just give me 1 second. all kinds of stuff is happening with my computer, but it's not going to stop anything. Might slow things down just a little bit. And today is Friday the 13th, so I don't know what that means. hopefully nothing bad. But I want to play this from Instagram. This is Jamal Bryant, in which he speaks to, I guess, the public and says, hooray, hooray, the boycott has ended. And if you don't remember, essentially, the way I remember it is the Trump administration came down with a lot of anti-DEI policies. They projected their preference onto America and a lot of businesses. Target, along with other businesses, decided they were going to pull away from their DEI initiatives. That made a lot of Black people upset, and Black people decided that, they were going to start the boycott. So let me play this for you from Jamal Bryant, and then if it shows, there it is. If it shows, yeah, something's wacky today. And here we go. Check this out. This is Pastor Jamal Bryant speaking to, again, Black people.
It's been a year and I'm grateful. I didn't think we could do it, but we did. History has just been made. The most effective and powerful boycott by Black people since the Montgomery bus boycott 70 years ago. We asked for 4 things, and I'm grateful to God that we've got 3 of them. They have invested $2 billion back into the Black community as they pledged after the death of George Floyd. On top of the $2 billion, an additional $100 million to immediate organizations that are meeting the needs within our community. Number 2, we asked them to partner with HBCUs. They have found, and we have found collectively, one that will do our pilot program with 12 other HBCUs to follow. Number 3, a reimagining of DEI. It's been a rough year for our community. 300,000 Black women have lost their jobs, and this is the highest unemployment for our people in years. The only thing that we didn't get accomplished, but we're still working towards, is an investment into Black banks. And I'm believing by grace, it's gonna get done. This new CEO has come handling business, and I'm glad to walk with him. The immediate target fast has come to an end. We claim victory, we're grateful. Go in or stay out, but I'm grateful under God, it's over.
He says he's grateful under God that it's over. Now, I got one more clip before the crew gets into it. I got one more clip for you. And this clip is from someone who has, we'll just say a slightly different opinion. Let me see if I can pull it up for you really, really quickly here. And then I want to get your thoughts on how you feel about this and where you are. Again, things are moving slow today. Hold on one second. Here it is. Got you. Let me pull this back up, and then we'll get straight into your comments.
Bubbling up of what is happening with ICE, and particularly in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and organizers making a specific demand of Target, who has allowed ICE agents to come onto their property and yank people off. We have workers who still have concerns. We have unionization efforts. And quite frankly, while we have made progress doesn't necessarily mean that this should come to an end. And that's where I come in to say, new CEO of Target, that he owes the Black community a public apology. And then the 4th ask is to invest $250 million in Black banks, and that has yet to be fulfilled.
And you mentioned your personal stance, which is
my
what?
Personal position is that Target can't do anything to put me back in there because it took them too long.
Yeah.
Why we got to beg you for over 400 days to do the right thing by Black people? You bent to bigotry. You could have not been to bigotry, and they automatically did the right thing. I'm old enough to remember when Cracker Barrel, when they took the rocking chair man off, and certain of the white community went crazy on that. It didn't take Cracker Barrel with 24, 48 hours. Somebody fact checked me on that, but it didn't take 400 days.
Yeah.
For them to put the man in the
2
rocking
days
chair.
it took, right?
Right. Back on the logo.
Yeah.
But yet we have a company that Black people was so loyal to, and who did the right thing when it came to the murder of George Floyd.
In 2020, they backed the Black community.
The Black community in a big way, and they should have, because this wasn't charity. I mean, they're making a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
Right? And we brought them into our family only for them in 2025 to bend the bigotry just like.
It is. I mean, that's 2 sides of it. I want to get your thoughts on it. I mean, a couple questions. I mean, one, generally, what do you think about Pastor Jamal Bryant saying that it's over. Is it over for you? Did it ever start for you? Did you boycott? And then, you know, in general, what are your feelings about Target in general? I mean, are your feelings boycott or breakup? What do you think?
Well, first, it's interesting how it became a fast, not a boycott. I noticed that terminology was a little bit strange to me. Also, I'm with Nina Turner. I'm never going back. And I'm never going back because they played in our face. They literally did those things in 2020. Only to they weren't forced to do the DEI things. They did it before they even had to. So it's akin to, you know, Black folks are loyal to the brand. They weren't giving us anything. Our economic power should have been enough. And to her point, they took too long. I mean, literally, people could do what they want to do. And what stuck out to me with Jamal Bryant's video is when he said the 100 million to organizations, that stuck out to me because I'm thinking like probably one of his organizations is the beneficiary of that 100 million. Some organization that he's affiliated with, or maybe it's a nonprofit within his church. I don't know that for certain, but that number stuck out to me. But no, I'm not. I had to drive through Target to get to Meyer the other day, and I felt dirty. So I'm never going back to. I'm never going back to Target. Like when I say never, I mean I'm never going back to Target.
You think Jamal Bryant is motivated by money? Is one of his organizations or church or something getting some kind of kickback or donation or something like? Or is it?
It didn't sound right, Nathan.
Didn't sound right. All right. All right. What do you think, Crew?
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to say is that, you know, always when you start talking about these corporations or whatnot giving money, I think the question that people always ask is who's getting it and where is it going? So he talked about, you know, $100 million going directly back into the Black community. Well, which communities is that? Is that Cincinnati seeing any of those dollars? Where is that money going? And that's where I think Black leaders, and I use that word loosely here, like Jamal Bryant and others, get reputations as being shakedown artists, right? Because it's exactly like what Tamaya was saying. If only your congregation or your people are benefiting, or you're directly putting money in your pocket, but it's not getting out to the broader community, then it looks like you're self-serving interest behind these things. And so I think following the money and figuring out where that money goes is critical. The other thing that I would say is that boycotts like these, when they take on sort of like a national or international thing, are bigger than any one person. I saw this in Cincinnati back in 2001 or 2003 after the riots, and there was a boycott. And you had a general boycott that it was understood, economic boycott, but you had a bunch of different organizations involved. And you had some people who were trying to declare that the boycott was over, and other groups were saying, hey, it ain't over. You still got people today who say that the boycott from 2003 is still on in Cincinnati. And so really no one person has the ability to say when a boycott reaches that scale that it's over, it's not over, because just as Tamaya said, people are going to do what they're going to do, whether that's individually or collectively. So this Target boycott is something that's going to be probably go on into perpetuity, because you're going to have people like Tamaya and others who are going to say, I'm never going back into Target again. I'm never going to shop there. So the boycott ain't over for them, regardless of what Jamal Bryant says. So I think from that aspect, he may say it. And I think that's why you heard him say at the end, I think there was some kind of tacit acknowledgement of that. He's like, you know, go in or stay out, you know, but it's over. So I think he was kind of trying to say with that, yeah, I understand. Even with me saying this, some people are still not going to shop there. So yeah, that's kind of my feeling about it. Is I think he needed to do also a better job of just saying where that money, in addition to saying what they got, where's it going and who is actually benefiting from those dollars.
Laketa, Phil, what's your take?
I mean, I think it's been summed up. I think Kevin done a great job of summing it up. I mean, my concern is, and I'm gonna go back to what Tamaya said. It just didn't feel right, and honestly, I don't, you know, that pastor doesn't dictate where I'm going to spend my money or not spend my money, and it does make me feel like, okay, what are you getting from it? What is your organization getting from it, and how is that helping the greater good of everyone? That's what my concern is that I haven't seen the greater good and how it's helping everyone. And, people are going to shop where they're going to shop, and to each is their own. For me, I never really shopped in Target anyway. The prices were too high for me. But it's what she said. I do go to Myers. That's my. It stay open late, so that's my go-to store. So, I don't know. I've heard some of the things that Target has done in the past. Where they've had, for example, during Black History Month, they've had some shirts and things like that to pander to our community. But I think it's a little further more than just Target. I mean, what are the other, department stores and things are doing for our community? When it comes down to that, I mean, we targeted, have fun at Target, but we targeted, Target, but what about the other stores? What about everyone else? And so that's where my concern comes in at.
I think because some people say to Laketa, they'll say, well, what about Walmart? What about these other stores? We knew where they were. And I think Target, it hurt a little bit more because of the proximity, because of the commitment they made after George Floyd, because of, as a Black queer woman, I couldn't wait till, Pride and Juneteenth to buy from the vendors that they had, to see what the shirts were. I got all my hair care products from Target. Like, I was a big Target person. And the reason I paid a little more for the prices because I thought they invested in our community in a rate that other companies did not. And so that's why I think the what they did ahead of, and that's the thing, like they did it ahead of Trump had these, they were at the time, they were just proposals. They jumped the gun, did it before they had to, and that stung. I'm just gonna be honest with you. So it's like they didn't even wait to see what all that was gonna be. They didn't wait to see, they didn't hold it. And there were other retailers like Costco and so many others who stood their ground, and Target just decided not to. And at that point, they decided, they made a business decision that Black dollars weren't. They made two business decisions. They said Black dollars weren't worth it, and two, they took the Black dollar for granted. They thought that they could do these things, and then it was going to be business as usual. So they made two mistakes, and so that's why, yes, you were right to look at other retailers, but. And I think overall, I think people are getting a little bit more wise relative to how they spend their dollars. But that's why Target hurt a little bit more than maybe like a Walmart or some of the others. We know, where they stand. But Target pretended. They were a pretender, and it hurt a little bit more.
Phil, what's your take? Jewish guy?
Talk about stereotypes. Oh my gosh. Well, let me say this. Please don't take this the wrong way, but you guys are starting to sound like Republicans. I mean, literally, every one of
That's
you.
Not too much on us.
As I said, I didn't mean it. Don't take it the wrong way. But everything you guys said is exactly what I was going to say. Where's the money going? Okay, I'd be honest with you. Even though she can probably tell you most of my wardrobe comes from Target, but I actually didn't know about this whole thing about the boycott. Maybe that's my lack of understanding or keeping in touch. I really didn't. But, I remember when I was on city council, Laketa, Tamaya, I don't know if you dealt with this. I know Laketa did when she was working for Dwight, but they had something called like enterprise zones or opportunity zones, and I just remember millions and millions of federal dollars, were going here, and nobody was really keeping track of where the money was going. There certainly was a sense that it was sort of going to people who had political pull, though I never did a complete, accounting of it. But that's exactly my question. Okay. You talk about what, 20 billion or 100 million, whatever. Yeah. Where is it going? And is there a mechanism set up to monitor it to make sure, it goes to the right causes?
Yeah. Well, I think there's, he mentioned, if you look at the things that he mentioned, if in fact these were things that Target actually did, he talked about money going to HBCUs. Like, that's easily trackable, right? If that's accurate, if Target is giving money to HBCUs, you can see where that's going. and then look at how those universities are using that money and what they're using that money for. It was the $100 million that was much more ambiguous that he said, where he talked about that he said it was going directly into Black communities, and I'm like, well, how? Like that's where the ambiguity
and what
is.
communities?
Right. And then and like investment in Black banks, like those are trackable, like those are specific trackable things. But 100 million going directly into the Black community, that is very ambiguous. And I'm like, exactly where, what organizations? He mentioned organizations. Which organizations are getting money, and how is that money being dispersed and used in a way to where it's going back to, or it's going to help and impact the communities that were impacted by DEI. You know, you talk about, he mentions Black unemployment, specifically women, but Black men are unemployed as well. I mean, there's large unemployment in it. How is this money being used to offset these things that he talked about? Like that's what's missing. That level of specificity is what's missing. And I think what usually makes these sorts of efforts problematic is, and where you hear a lot of Black people say, like you have and again, I can't stress this enough. This is the danger zone if you are a Black leader engaged in these kinds of conversations with corporate America. This is how you get the reputation. I mean, God rest his soul, Jesse Jackson, who just passed. He had a reputation, somewhat as a reputation of being a shakedown artist, because Jesse was very good at exactly this type of thing, going in, putting pressure on corporate interests and getting money. And the question is always how much of that money was going to Jesse and what Jesse wanted, and how much of that was actually getting out to the community. So I think it's a very, very sensitive and fine line that you walk in. If you're going to position yourself as a leader, these are the questions that you're going to have to deal with and answer to for the people.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Nate.
No, go ahead. Go right ahead, Laketa.
No, go ahead. I'd like to hear from you.
No, I mean, for me, I just, I'm old enough to have seen this movie over and over and over and over and over again. And we in the Black community talk so much about economic power, and we got $1 trillion worth of buying power. But this just underscores to me that there's very little leadership. There's very little focus and cohesion in terms of what we want in terms of outcomes. I mean, for this, I think it started in a righteous way, and I think that there is potential power in it. But it just makes me wonder, what Jamal Bryant got out of this, because it almost feels like he left a meeting in which some people said some things, and he ran out to Instagram, and I'm thinking, that's not smart. It's not leadership. It's not responsible. I don't know. I'm a show me kind of person. And if it were for me, rather than running out of the meeting because some people said something, I would wait until the things were actually put in place and actually see them there before I even open my mouth.
Especially because he said it was the greatest thing since the Montgomery bus boycott. That's kind of a pretty strong statement.
Very strong. If it were me, I would let their actions speak for themselves. I don't need to say anything. If you're making all these historic investments, when you actually do that and the money hits the bank accounts and starts hitting whatever they're supposed to go, that will make news in and of itself. So it's just very suspicious. I'm suspicious already of pastors who are overly vain, like Jamal Bryant, designer this, designer that. The guy looks good. That takes a lot of money to keep with that kind of wardrobe. I'm not making any assumptions. I'm just sharing my own personal experience about.
He definitely didn't get it at Target.
He definitely didn't get it at Target. He didn't get those designer shades and clothes from Target, shoes.
Target might have paid for it though.
Again, I'm not making any assumptions, but it's just this. Even if it's true, I just felt like it could have been handled better. Let the actions of Target make the announcements, rather than you getting out there claiming that look at what I did for you. I just think it could have been handled differently. But I want to hope for the best.
That's kind of where I was with
I
it
agree,
too.
because
Like,
what happens now if it doesn't happen? What happens if it doesn't come to fruition? You know, they said one thing, but we all know historically they say one thing to our face and do something else. And so now, what happens if everything doesn't cross the line? You know, it doesn't come to fruition. Now you're looking crazy. I mean, in my opinion, you already, because like I said, who made you the leader of it? But at the end of the day, we don't know. And I agree with you, Nate. They should have let the action speak for itself. Not only that, the question would have been like, you know, when it comes to employment inside of Target, why is it always, you know, the people who are at the lower level look like us? Let's look at the higher level employment. How many people are in place at higher levels? I mean, one of the things that I'm gonna be honest with you that I liked about Macy's, when I've seen Macy's, when you've gone down to, you see the people that look like us that are in higher level positions. You know, not to necessarily compare Macy's to a Target, but I'm just saying I know that in Macy's they have people that are that look like us, that are in higher level positions and not just the ground level in the retail spots. And so those to me are also things that I feel like are tangible. They should have come out of that as well.
yeah, I think
the biggest red flag
the risk
for
that
me.
they run though, Nathan. I think the risk that Jamal Bryant runs now though is now he done caught strays. Like y'all were talking about Jesse Jackson earlier. Like, do we need to boycott Jamal? Like, the issue is like he let them off the hook. He should have maybe it's all in how it was handled. He could have made an Instagram message and said, I met with them and this is what they committed to, and give them the time and space to show the commitment to it. And that was the issue. He got what he got, and then he stood in front of us, and now he's playing in our face. And so, like, the closed door meeting thing just didn't sit well. Like, he could have just outlined what they were, like, the things that he just outlined. He could have done that in his suit, in his glasses. Like, I ain't mad at him. But then said, we'll track their progress and actually put a timeline to it. So, like, hey, by this time, this is what they committed to. But he telling us it's over. And it's like, bro, who says who? And so we looking at him crazy. Now his name is Mud. He had a good name. Now his name is Mud. I don't want to hear nothing he got to say.
You know what the biggest red flag for me, and I watched the video several times, there's a huge red flag in everybody's face. And that red flag is that he's out there by himself. It's just him. Where is the leadership from Target?
Yeah.
Like when people do these kind of things, typically you see leadership from both sides. They hold a press conference. They do a joint media thing. It's just him. To me, that is a huge red flag to me. I hope otherwise, but I just felt like he could have, if everything he said is true, I still think there was another route that would have put more pressure on Target to step up their leadership. And it would have looked a lot better for everything involved, in just my humble opinion. But he's Jamal Bryant with the $2,000, glasses and suit. So he must be doing something right. He knows way better than I do. My glasses are from Zenni. I paid like $50 for these. So
don't, Nathan. We've all noticed your glasses are very classy. So don't minimize that. Yeah,
that's my wife likes you. Thank you.
Hey, Nathan,
hold on for a second. I'm gonna close my blinds because someone thought I was asleep and I was looking down. So I'm gonna close my blinds so we can actually see my face.
Hey, I wouldn't go so far as to say, Nathan, that Jamal Bryant knows more than you. I just think Jamal Bryant, because of who he is able to move in spaces that some people are not. Like, I think that's a lot of times that people make, is that because somebody is able to move in a space doesn't necessarily mean that they're any smarter than you are. It just means that, hey, look, Jamal Bryant has been able to build a brand for himself through his church and his anointing. And I think anybody who knows Jamal Bryant, who has followed his story, knows that that's a brother that's far from perfect. I mean, he's had his share of high profile public controversy. So I don't say that to run him down. I just say that to say that Jamal Bryant ain't no better than anybody else. He just has the ability to operate in spaces right now that other people don't. And I'm sure that if Nathan Ivey or Tamaya Dennard or Phil, God forbid, Phil Heimlich, had an opportunity to sit in front of Target, you could have represented, the people just as well as Jamal
Don't
Bryant.
give me any ideas.
Not me.
Phil
couldn't have, but I
have the same shirts.
Hey, I could do it.
Yeah, but we don't know what you're gonna come out with.
Exclusion here, okay?
All right, let's move on. I appreciate the conversation. And again, typically what I do is I'll take comments and I'll put them, I get the lower thirds, but something's happening with the Restream system right now. For those who didn't know, I'm using Restream. If you like the live stream, I would recommend them. They do a pretty good job in terms of what you see. So I'm not able to do that today. So it'll just scroll on the right-hand side there of the show. So on the screen, should I say. But let's move on. So let's talk about our Senator John Husted. Good man. He has been getting roasted for some comments that he made in a recent interview. Quote, people living in poverty are just not very experienced at navigating the real world, right? I remember talking to one young lady who said, well, I don't really know how money works at a grocery store because she grew up and has lived all of her adult life using SNAP cards to buy groceries. So he's talking about SNAP cards, and people now have been snapping on him, saying that he is out of touch. Some people are saying that what he's saying is accurate. But who's really living in the real world here, in your opinion? Is it John Husted or politicians describing hard truths? Or are they reinforcing harmful stereotypes about people who are so-called poor? What do you think? Was John Husted telling the truth? You know, poor people just they live in a different world.
Here's what I think. I think John Husted spoke inartfully about what may be true of some people. So I think what John Husted is trying to express is if you are somebody who potentially has grown up or who has grown up in poverty, in impoverished situations, your concept of money and how money might work might be different than someone who, you know, maybe has more financial literacy. Let me just say that. And sort of your handling or dealing with money might be different. I think that that's probably absolutely true in some cases, not every cases. This is what stereotypes do. They make broad generalizations about people, and whether it's black people or impoverished people or white people or Jewish people or whatever. Whenever you want to try to assign some sort of characteristic or trait to a large number of people, I think that's always a loser. I think you probably have some people who are poor who don't know how to deal with money, and some people who got money who don't know how to deal with money. I think it comes down to an individual basis and how much exposure or information that you have. So Kevin. I think he inartfully said something that I think applies in general to people, whether you have money or not. And so if I were him, I would have probably just stayed away from saying it the way that he said it.
When you said inartful, I'm looking like this, but my face is like, no, that is not inartful. That was a horrible thing to say. It was nothing inartful about it, respectfully, Kevin. He has no proximity to poverty, and so he doesn't understand poverty. Poverty is very much a policy situation. Like people, it is very reckless of him to say that without having any sort of like lived experience or firsthand knowledge, because that's actually not true at all. One thing I used to hate is like when they would like tell people, people have make like $7-8 an hour, and they'd be like, go to these budgeting classes. Your money, you cannot make. You only can $7 an hour. That's insulting. That's an insult to people who make $7 an hour, $8 an hour, $10 an hour. Things cost. There are cost of living increases, the housing, and everything's expensive, and you can't $7 or $8 budget your way out of that. And that's the bottom line. Things cost a lot. The rate that the cost of living goes doesn't match the rate that wages are going, and that's why we have poverty. And then there might be other, circumstances and mitigating things that may cause some people to be impoverished. But at the end of the day, when he made that statement, he's essentially letting the hook off of the wage gap, corporations, and policymakers, and that is why we have poverty. It has nothing to do with whether or not someone can knows how to go to the grocery store with a SNAP card, because even whether you have SNAP or cash, eggs are too high, butter is too high, milk is too high. So it doesn't matter what you have, whether it be cash or that. So you can't have a one-off conversation and make a blanket statement, and knowing that there's some people who have no proximity, so they're going to take that and run with it, and then like it's not it's inaccurate. That's what it is. That's the only thing I can describe as someone who has come from poverty, someone who has come from government assistance, he could not have been more wrong. And I think it's really it's harmful, and it's just inaccurate.
To me, his comments just shows how out of touch he is. To say that they don't understand the real world. I mean, I like to see him trying to stretch $100 to make sure that their kid is fed, they have daycare, they have transportation issues, the rising prices of everything, and the job situation. I think that is the real world. People often struggle. The real world is people actually taking the little bit that they have and actually trying to make sure that it covers all those bases. To say that they don't understand it, I think he doesn't understand it. And I think it's a disgrace to our community. I mean, at the end of the day, many of us are living paycheck to paycheck, and trying to figure out the struggles of trying to making sure, like our seniors, the medicine, the healthcare costs. Do I pay for food? Do I rent my house? Do I heat up my house? Do I cool my house? Do I those type of things that he will never understand the struggles because he doesn't come from that. So to simply say that they don't get it, I disagree. And it's disheartening for someone to be in that position who don't understand it and would even make the comment like that.
I think what all of you guys are saying is true, but I think, and I'm not trying to make excuses for John Husted or say that what he's saying is correct or what you guys are saying is incorrect. But there's a popular thing that says two things can be true at the same time. And I think there's a world that John Husted is speaking about that's a very real world for people like him and people who experience what he experiences. And I think there's a real world that you guys are describing that people who are trying to make money stretch in impoverished situations are. And so I think let me finish, Tamaya. If you listen to the example that he gave, and that's what I say, you got to look at his comments in the context of what he was talking about. He's talking about a conversation that he had with a particular individual who was explaining something to him, and he was saying, that's not the way that the world works. And it's clear that this young lady didn't understand that, right? That is the context in which he made his comments, right? And that's not necessarily inaccurate. You might not like it. You might think it's mean. You might think it's stereotypical, but it's not inaccurate in the context of what he was explaining.
It is because he made that comment, but based on one person's statement, and so to make that a blanket statement against everyone who are
and I said that
don't understand the real world is the problem. So I don't believe that there's two things in this case. I understand what you're saying. Two right, can happen, even though the opposite, they could be both right. Well, no, in this case, he's not right at all. He's completely wrong. To say he's that based on one conversation with one person because she doesn't understand it. Let me say this: that person could have been rich and still wouldn't understand that. So that has nothing to do with this or that. For me, that's the problem. For him even making that conversation about people who are in a position or not like him or poor or and I hate that term.
I appreciate what you're saying, Laketa. I'm also saying to you, Kevin, this is not a situation where we're not going to both sides this. This is not a both things are true situation. He took one conversation and tried to apply it, and you don't get that privilege of like having these one-offs when you have the platform that he has. When you're a legislator, when you're a United States senator, there's more gravity to what you say. So I can't let him off the hook and try to both sides this or both things are true. Right. Because it just doesn't work like that. And then in the context of they don't understand the real world, he was very intentional about taking that one statement and trying to apply it. And so there's context there that we have to take into account. If he's just Joe Schmo on the street outside the coffee shop saying that, it has one meaning. But when you're a United States senator making decisions on legislation, it takes on a whole nother definition. The ability for people, as my mom did, who made a way out of no way and tell me they don't understand real life, that is crazy to me. They understand life better than most people do. And so it was not only was it condescending for him to say like somebody doesn't understand real life, it was flat out inaccurate. And I love you, Kevin, but this was absolutely flat out wrong. Usually I find some little ministry of truth in what you're saying, because I like you like that.
No,
and I
no,
like you
no,
like
no.
that.
That isn't always the case.
Yeah, sometimes I'm with you, Kevin, but this one he was flat. He's wrong as two left shoes, and Houston.
That's a good one. I got to use that one.
Well, every the bad clock is right twice a day, Phil. So what I'm trying to say is like, you have to understand that I can't speak on experiences I don't have, and so he should have because he just could have said nothing, because saying nothing is free. And so that's the thing that makes me mad about Houston. Like he doesn't know about it, and it's okay not to know about it, but don't play in my face and pretend that you do.
I would like to know with the wealthiest person on the crew today. I'm just making assumptions here. Phil
Kevin,
Heimlich.
go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin. He's asking you a question.
Phil Heimlich.
Indian Hill Phil, come on
Indian Hill
now,
Phil.
man. Come on, Indian Hill
What
Phil.
does Indian Hill Phil
I
think
love,
about this?
first you engage in ethnic stereotypes about me, and then you come up with another stereotype about my lifestyle. I mean, it's unbelievable, the atmosphere in this show. I'm ready to file a complaint with, what do they call it, the EOC or whatever the heck it is, but I'll let it slide for now.
Hey, Nathan, I'm not going to put Phil on blast. A bank receipt fell out his pocket when he was at the Kings game last week. I ain't going to tell you how many zeros was on that bad boy. I'm just telling you, don't let Phil fool you.
The reason for that big receipt was because, between all of us here, I had a little inside information about that game. And I, as I said, I parlayed it into a very nice payday. I won't say where the information came from. That's the reason. But back to Houston. The interesting thing is there are a lot of middle income and high income people that don't know how to manage money. I mean, I know doctors. I know a guy, doctors makes hundreds of thousands, and they've got over $500,000 in debt. I mean, so it's, I don't in any way stereotype people who are, say, lower income. Some lower income people know how to manage money better than higher ones. I will say myself, through confessions, I have throughout my life been a terrible manager of money, and it has cost me. Now, I'll tell you the thing that helped me the most as far as trying to understand some of this stuff is, it sounds trite, but it's biblical truth. The Bible, the Bible says, and you don't hear this among the financial gurus, the borrower is servant to the lender. And let me tell you something. That is a financial truth, which every one of us should take to heart. There was a friend of mine, I assume he's a middle income guy, the other day. He said, Phil, I want to ask your advice. I want to fix up my house. Should I go take out one of those, 20,000 home equity loans? Is that a good idea? I said, no, it's not a good idea, because you're personally on the line for that. They can take anything from you if you can't make those payments. It's better that you save up the money or find some savings and do it than sign up and put your name and your credit at risk.
Here's what I think. I think it's very interesting that Senator Husted shared his story, and he talked about a young woman, and then he assigned it to her economic status, rather than saying young people don't have a lot of knowledge about financial literacy, which we all know is true.
Right.
I thought it was very interesting that he jumped to the fact that she was so-called poor rather than she was a young person. The other thing I would say is that when if you're a policymaker, in my opinion, and you observe that there's a gap in policy or there's a need, well, then suggest some policy. Why don't you suggest or get your buddies on the state side to put some money away for financial literacy in after-school programs or in public schools?
One of the worst problems, I think, with the biggest neglect in education at particularly the high school level, is they don't teach kids anything about money. Right. How many kids graduate from high school, they don't know how to write out a check? I mean, that ought to be probably the most important thing that kids are taught. But you know what? You rarely find a course in personal finance at most
Absolutely.
schools.
But there's opportunities there.
And
there are opportunities.
You're right.
There.
He could.
The money is there. We got $100-something million, hundreds of millions of dollars in unclaimed funds. They could take some of that money and say, you know what? Financial literacy seems to be a real issue with young people in Ohio. We're going to address it. Let's wait and see if they do that. And again, somebody else said this on the crew, and I agree with it. The concept of living beyond your means That cuts across all socioeconomic generations, black, white. It's a whole lot of people. There's people that make millions of dollars and they're still living beyond their means. There's people who make $100,000 a year living beyond your means. So financial literacy to me is something that almost anybody can learn from. And I also add this. I disagree with our dear Senator John Husted. I think that if there's anybody in this world who understands the real world, it's poor people. Nobody in this world understands the value of a dollar, the value of a penny, the value of a quarter more than somebody who don't have a lot of them.
Exactly. They know how to budget. They know how to make that dollar stretch. I mean, my question is, he made that comment. So I'd like to know, since you think they don't know how to navigate the real world, what policies are you trying to come forward to help them navigate the real world? What policies are you going to try to develop since you made that comment that's going to help, as you say, the poor people understand the real world? Or is it just lip service?
I just want to flag, it is just lip service, Laketa. And I want to just flag for Phil, I don't want nobody writing no checks. I just tell me you owe without telling me you owe.
What's that? What's that again? I missed that.
I don't want anybody writing. I don't want anybody teaching people how to write.
Oh, okay. All right. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Respectfully,
That's 3 shots at Phil.
Point made. Yeah.
That's 3 shots at Phil today. We are on a roll. I love it.
At least mine had nothing to do with you being
don't even write in cursive.
I swear, I am going to.
Kids don't even write in cursive anymore.
That's what I said. They can't write a check because they don't know how to sign their names.
Let's move on. Let's talk about what's happening. And this, again, I don't think it's an old story because the themes and the impact is still relevant. And I think it's going to have ramifications for more Ohio public schools. But let's talk about the decision they made up in Little Miami. Their board recently voted 4-1 to remove this poster right here from one of their classrooms. Hate has no home here. And the issue was the flags that people said were pro-LGBTQ, pro-transgender. I believe there's some people who feel like that's not appropriate to be in a classroom. Now, I can't speak as to why, because the way I look at things, I don't understand it. But I will say I do have children. I have a son who's in public school right now. If this was in his school, I would have his in one of his classrooms, I would have no problem with it. You know, I would feel good about my son being in an environment where, you know, the general concept is that hate has no home here. But I'm also not one of the Little Miami board members. They, in their infinite wisdom, decided to make this move. So I want to get your thoughts about it. And here's a question to get things started. Does removing symbols protect students, or does it silence identities? What do you think?
So this is interesting because we kind of had not this exact same conversation, but you remember, I think it was a couple pods ago, there was the young man who had the sign in the hallway about ICE, right? And remember, the student hit him. And we had this conversation about saying that, hey, schools should be good about policing political statements and contents in schools, right? One might look at that poster and say that it takes even though I don't think it does, but one could make this argument that's political, right? That those on a certain side of this could say that's pushing a certain political agenda, and that's no different than the kid who was holding the "I support ICE" sign in the middle of the hallway when he took that jab. So I think if you're looking at it objectively, you have to say that if you don't think political speech should be a part of what is inside our public schools, then that has to apply to all types of political speech, not just the political speech we don't like.
Is this political speech?
Some people might look at that and might say that for exactly the reasons that you said. You're trying to push an LGBTQ agenda in a school. Somebody would say that, but because the main point about that,
I disagree. I don't think that that's a political agenda. I think by saying that, you know, hate has no place here, that covers everything to me. I don't think that that's about any political LGBTQ Q or anything like that. To me, hate doesn't, even bullying, any of those things. People get bullied for their clothes that they're wearing. To me, that's hate as well. So I don't agree. I don't know if I feel like I'm maybe the only one that has a small child that's in elementary school. That in my child's school, if I saw that in my child's school, I would be happy. Like, yes, because hate don't belong anywhere in our schools. And so I don't see that as that. I think for me, one of the questions you said, Nate, is that silencing? I think that speaks to the administration. I think that's their fear. I don't think it has anything to do with the kids at all. I think that's their fear. That's on that Miami school board fear, and it's not about the kids. Because
so you have to ask Laketa though, what was the purpose of the student putting the poster? So what was the motivation or the agenda behind the creation
and safety for
behind
everyone.
the creation of the poster and putting it there? If it is to make some type of political, and these are the times that we're living in. I'm not saying you gotta like it. I'm not saying you gotta like it.
It's making people feel valued, respected, protected against bullying, all those things. And I agree. Hate has no place there. Everyone should be loved no matter what it is. And so that's what it's all about for me.
So as someone who is like, I am the resident, I don't know if you have any other openly gay people who are part of the podcast, but I'm gonna be the token gay person as, in this space.
I've been the token other things on this show.
I was gonna say that, Phil, but I didn't want to. I was gonna say that, so I was thinking that. I was thinking that. Get out of my head, because I sure was thinking that. But who I am is not political. Like, that's my issue with the poster. That's my issue with the argument against the poster. I'm not. It's my identity. And so at the point where you're saying my identity is political, that's problematic for me. That's who I am. So it does silence identities, because there's a child, there are children there who identify that way, whether you want them to or not. It's not about you. It's to your point, Laketa, it's them imposing their own views, their own fear, their own homophobia or transphobia or xenophobia on other people. The issue is it was an American flag. There was a multiple queer flags. Hate has no home here. What is political about saying hate doesn't belong here? There's nothing political about it. So whether you see
the colorism flag of all of our colors, black people are in so many different colors, shades of color. That's all of that.
And that's the thing. It's the brown hands, it's black hands, there's white hands, there's obviously multicultural hands. There's nothing political about that. And for someone who sees it as political, that's a them problem. Who I am is not political, and they were wrong to remove that, because also what happens is when kids are committing suicide because they can't be who they are, and people are like, I don't know why they committed suicide. I'm not sure what happened, because you're not allowing them the space and the freedom to be who they are. You're not allowing them to be themselves. And it's not me just saying it. You look at suicide rates. Kids are killing themselves because of their environments like this. And that's the part that makes me sad. Like, I am 46 years old. I am fine in my identity, but there are people in that school who are 10, 12, 13. They're trying to figure things out. But when they see that kids know, and when they see the school boards taking that down, they understand that who they are is not welcome here. Right. Who they are, they can't be who they are. So they're trying to suppress and deal with these things as children. They shouldn't have to. They should be able to go to a space that is inclusive, that is warm, that is welcoming, not just accepting, but warm and welcoming to them as their kids. They're trying to navigate life. So yeah, it does silence identities. And this is what happens when homophobic people are elected to office.
And to me, there's several different flags, like I said there, and all you targeted was the one rainbow flag. What about the rest of the flags that are there? What about the other flags that are represented there? You made that decision based on one of the hearts. There's 4 other different hearts there. So I'm like, it wasn't a political. I think the little Miami school board made it political. It's not political at all.
Phil, what do you think?
I read a story today that Senator Tommy Tuberville from Alabama, who, as I understand, is not known as one of the deep thinkers in the United States Senate, he's running for governor of Alabama. And frankly, to kind of boost his standing, I guess, he's been going around attacking Muslims, saying they should be taken out of the country, making all these horrible comments about the mayor of New York, this kind of stuff. And, I just listened to that. It just makes me sick. It's just pure hate to get him so he can get some political advantage. And I contrast him with this guy I've talked about before, James Tallarico, who's the seminarian guy who won the primary in Texas. And what he says every time he speaks, he goes, there's two commandments we're given. One that he says his way he puts it is we follow a barefoot rabbi, which is, I think, a pretty cool way to say it. He goes, love God and we love other people, whether they're black or white or lesbian or Muslim or whatever. And I love the way that he says that. And I as far as that poster goes, I don't really see, I would agree. I don't think it is political. It's basically showing a lot of different types of people. You may not agree with the lifestyle. You may not believe in laws that protect gay people, whatever it is. But what that's saying is we are not going to hate people based on those characteristics.
I think there's a lot of emotion out there among some people who feel like if their son, and I think this is more about boys, if their son is exposed to anything that is pro-transgender or pro-LGBTQ, that's going to make them transgender or make them LGBTQ. I think there's a real hysteria out there about primarily sons being converted or somehow shepherded into a lifestyle that their parents don't agree with. And for me, I don't believe none of that. My son is 11 years old right now. If he walked into a classroom right there, I would feel more comfortable that he's got a teacher or an administration that realize that there's a lot of different people out here. We're all born differently, and they want to make sure they create a safe space for everybody. Whoever my son ends up being, whatever his sexuality ends up being, it makes no difference to me. He's still going to be my son. But there are some people I feel like are really caught up with that. Like, I can't let my son see
who made
an LGBTQ character in a movie because if I do, then he might become LGBTQ. Or I can't let my son see a transgender this or that because he might become that. He might think it's acceptable. I just don't believe that one bit. And I think there's something to your environment, but I am his father. And I'm more consistent in his life than any poster or anything in popular culture. And I'm just going to rest on that. And no matter who he ends up being, whatever choice he makes, he was given to me by God. That's my boy, period. And I just wish that more people felt comfortable like that, just to allow their children to be who they're going to be. And that's just what it is. But what were you saying, Phil?
There was another, I think, a joining clip that you sent us, Nathan. Correct if I'm wrong, but the guy on the school board who promoted this policy about getting rid of that, well, and he does it in a religious. He goes, "Oh, I'm for Jesus." He's doing it from I'm doing this because I believe in Jesus. Well, then they find posts by him on some site somewhere where he's praising Hitler and denying the Holocaust and all that. I mean, unfortunately, I guess he resigned, but boy, you talk about hypocrisy. That's just unbelievable.
Right. So there's got to be a connection in terms of his personal philosophies, and then leading to his policy decision in terms of, this in his schoolroom. But
well, I think there's no question that Little Miami has had their issues when it pertains to whether it's, this guy with Jewish hate or whether it was several years ago. I think there was a basketball team they had out there that had jerseys with denigrating names for Black people on the back and whether this. So Little Miami is not necessarily known. I mean, and when you look at the demographics of what that community is, it's not a particularly diverse area, to begin with. So you've got I'm sure you've got a lot of attitudes out there that are not necessarily welcoming. And my point was not necessarily to say that I agree with the positions that the board took here, but the reality is that there are a lot of people who, like it or not, identity has become part of politics, right? We talk about identity politics all the time, and there are those who believe that identity politics play a huge part in our society, tend to err toward the side of what this Little Miami board did in saying they believe this was political speech versus what you all are saying. hey, these are just people expressing their identities and who they are. In the political climate that we live in today, like it or not, the political conversation doesn't separate the two. So when you get into these sorts of policy decisions that are being made, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think no hate should be a political thing, right? Like that should be understood. And the fact that you even have to post something like that says something about, in general, probably about the climate in which these students are going to school in every day. But yet, and still, there are going to be those who are going to take it and present it through the political lens. And that's exactly, I think, what happened in this case.
See, the challenge I have, though, Kevin, with the identity politics is there's always been identity politics. When a white man puts on his political flyer his wife and his children, that is identity politics. It only was called identity politics at the point where I said, I am openly gay, I am a Black woman, I am proud. There's like, oh yeah, we don't want to do identity politics, but they've been doing it for a long time. And that's the issue I have with someone who's been working in the political space for a long time. And the internalized homophobia, whether it be, I don't know, things that they got going on within themselves, fear of, as to your point, Nathan, of like being turned gay. You're only gonna be turned gay if you are gay. Like that's the crazy part for me. And it really, when I go on my timeline to see people are obsessed with gay people. It is insane how the obsession with gay people is like, we don't have nothing to do with anything. We just get pulled into a conversation and we like, wait, what do we do? We catching strays and we ain't even do anything. So my challenge is like, people have this obsession with homosexuality, whether it be the sexual part or it's crazy and it's insane. And really for Little Miami and school districts like that, I'm willing to bet, and I'll probably do some digging after the pod today, but I want to see what kind of suicide rates are happening in those areas for young people and at certain age, because I mean, I literally sometimes have worked with young people who just literally, I can't be they're afraid to be who they are because they're afraid that when they come out, they're not going to be somebody's son anymore. They're not going to be somebody's daughter anymore. And I think, at the end of the day, the challenge is, God didn't say the things that people want to make to, and I know you're a preacher, Kevin, and I'm stepping into your space, and I want to John Husted the situation by talking about things that don't pertain to me necessarily. But I am saying that people try to say that God said things that God didn't actually say, and it's rooted in such ignorance. And I think it's a cross between ignorance and their own internalized homophobia, and that's why we have the challenges that we have around homophobia. Because what is someone living their life and doing what they should do and going to work every day? What does that have to do with them? What does being trans have to do with people? Like, we have a war right now because we didn't like 2 trans people go to school in Ohio. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, we are waging war because of, we have the people voted for Trump because there were 2 trans kids in Ohio. You get what I'm saying? Like, that's how overgrown and how ridiculous the situation that people voted for didn't even. Yeah, it's mind-boggling to me how we're so obsessed with and Black people. Let me say this: the way we are homophobic and transphobic, it blows me because we should understand discrimination more than anybody else. So it's like it stings a little bit more when it comes from Black people because we should not be discriminating against anyone because we know what that's like to being persecuted for who we are. So it just, and I know Little Miami is mostly a white district. I'm just speaking more broadly about homosexuality and our obsession with transphobia and homophobia. And it's really, it's nerve-wracking every day that, I'm having my head on a swivel. I ain't done nothing to anybody because I'm gay, and I'm visibly gay. I'm not like, you can't not tell that I'm gay. So I literally have to walk around every day with my head on a swivel because I'm afraid of I almost got hit by a truck one day, and they intentionally stopped, looked at me, know what was up. So I'm gonna like say in this way because people fear gay people. I'm not interested in talking to them. I'm not interested. So
like we lose
for this young people.
Yeah, I think part of the obsession, and I'm using your word that you talk about, Tamaya, is because I think more gay, trans people, LGBTQ people are asserting their voices. They are they're coming out more. They're fighting for their rights and their freedoms. And with that comes everything that you just described. I mean, it was no different it's no different than when any minority group comes out and demands their place in society. It happened to Black people. It happened to women. You know, it's routine that when the majority has to begin to cede space, to cede platforms, to cede voices to others who did not typically have that in the past, the rub is always going to be war or battle. You know, it doesn't come without, you know, discomfort and fights and all of those things, because people are choosing not to be silent anymore. Yeah, when gay people were in the closet and they weren't saying anything and they weren't demanding, you know, to be, you know, treated equally or to have access to marriage or to be represented in media just like everybody else. Nobody had a problem. I mean, maybe they had a problem with it, but nobody was talking about it like they're talking about it now, you know. And so I think anytime you have groups who are coming out and demanding rights for themselves and a place in society that's greater than what it has been, the rub is always going to be those who are uncomfortable with that, you know, pushing back on it. And I think, me personally, I think everybody just need to mind their own business. You know, if it ain't bothering you, if it ain't affecting you, what difference do it make to you how somebody else is living their life or what they're doing? This is the United States that we live in, where people have the freedom to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, whatever that looks like to them. Your happiness ain't got to look like my happiness. You know, the fact of the matter is we all have a right to it. So this obsession that people have with what's going on in other people's bedrooms and what they're doing, I don't get it. Because I know I got enough problems of my own I got to navigate to be worried about what somebody else is doing and who they with, right? I have to manage it. Me and managing my relationship with my wife takes everything in me to make sure that I don't mess that up.
It probably takes everything in her more than it takes everything in you.
I don't mess up my own good thing. So I ain't got time to be worried about what nobody else is doing.
Understood. Let's move on.
I just want to make sure you heard what Phil said.
If you live in Ohio and you are registered to vote in Ohio, this impacts you. It's been reported that Secretary of State Frank LaRose has given 8 million Ohio voters voting data to the Trump Justice Department. This is because the Trump Justice Department has been claiming that there was widespread voters fraud, and they're claiming that they are very concerned about this. And so now what you're seeing is that in states in which you have Secretary of States or Republican majorities, they are turning over our data, which includes your name, address, date of birth, last 4 digits of your social security number. How does the crew feel about this? Does sharing this type of voter information strengthen democracy, or does it threaten privacy? Or do you have any other concerns? Or are you like, hey, do what you got to do. If there's nobody doing anything wrong, there's no big deal.
I mean, for me, it's twofold. You know, if you're not doing anything, you don't have to worry about anything. But you can say that. But that's with Trump. Let me be clear with you. You got to figure out who you're dealing with. So you may not be doing anything wrong, but Trump gonna find something wrong regardless, because that's who he is. And so to me, that's a problem that you turned over my information. And so I do think it threatens that. And for me, I wonder, what is the underlying, what is the real reason? You say one thing, but what is the real reason you turn that information over? To me, it's just to try to figure out, you won, sir. So what do you need the information for now? It's a crock to me.
He wants it now so he can do something to interfere in the 2026 election. That's why he wants it now. That's why they went and raided the ballots in that Georgia office. It's all a way of moving towards something, whether maybe it means sending the military in to seize the ballots or something like that. That's what it's all geared toward.
Yeah, and I think that was the issue also in Minnesota too. Like, he wanted the voter rolls, and that he was like basically they were using that as ransom, because I really feel like one, I'm not sold that he's not going to try to hold on for a third term, or there's going to do some sort of like interference in the presidential election. I'm pretty sure. And then also, he has said himself that if I lose power in the House and the Senate, I'm going to prison. He knows that. He knows that will. I know I see your face, Phil, but I think
he says he'll be impeached. I haven't heard him say.
I'm sorry.
He's going to prison.
No, you're right. Impeached. So they know it. And the thing is, the folks that are doing all this, committing these crimes, Senator Balint said it herself. Congresswoman Balint said it herself. They're not going to be in power forever. And so they're doing everything they can to make sure they hold on to power forever, because as soon as they're out of power, they all will be prosecuted. And that is what they understand to be the case. So you're right. Not only will he be impeached, his administration will be impeached, and they know it. So they're doing everything they can to hold on to power, which includes seizing voter rolls and making the elections look the way they want them to look.
I would recommend that everybody make sure, everybody who's listening to this, watching this, if you live in the state of Ohio, if you live in Cincinnati, Hamilton County, wherever, go make sure you check your voter registration. Make sure you check your voter registration, because I would hate for anybody to think that they registered and that they on the rolls to show up on election day to vote and you find out that they've taken you off the rolls. This is why I don't like what LaRose has done, because this is exactly the type of shenanigans that can take place when they start messing around with these voter rolls and information. They can take you off and you thinking, oh, I'm good, you're not checking. And then people show up on election day and it's, oh, I'm sorry. So that's the first thing I would recommend, is that between now and whatever elections, make sure you're constantly checking on your voter registration to make sure that you're registered to vote, and also that you know where you're supposed to go to vote. That's first and foremost. I agree with everything else that everybody has said. Here's my disappointment with Frank LaRose, and I've said this many times. After the 2020 election, when Donald Trump lost and he claimed that it was stolen, Frank LaRose, I never will forget, I interviewed him because as Trump was going through his 60 some odd lawsuits about trying to claim that the election was stolen, I interviewed Frank LaRose extensively. And Frank LaRose talked about how notions of voter fraud was a bunch of bunk, that it was politically manipulated drivel, and that what Donald Trump was shoveling was pure bullcrap, that Ohio's elections were safe, that it was easy to vote, and that it was hard to cheat in the state of Ohio. He not only said about the state of Ohio, but because he said he also coordinates and talks to secretaries of states in other states. He also poo-pooed the idea of some widespread conspiracy. He said it was basically impossible to have voter fraud on the level that Donald Trump was alleging. He essentially said was ridiculously impossible. Go back and read the story. I wish I'd have brought the clip. I'd have posted it in the chat so people could use. This is what this man said. And everything that he's done since Donald Trump has come back on the scene has been nothing but kowtow and ring kiss and butt kiss to Donald Trump so that he can further his own political stake. Guys like him, and I gave him a lot of credit back then. I said, man, you know, LaRose is one of the few Republicans who got the basically the cojones to stand up and say that Trump is full of it. And much like my disappointment with Rob Portman, mine is a little bit steeper for Frank LaRose, because Portman ain't on the scene no more. I'm still mad at him for his rollover. But what LaRose is doing is just it's just unbelievably disingenuous. And I would never vote for the man just simply on those grounds. I mean, other people can do what they want to, but this is a guy who spoke the truth. And ever since before in 2020, after 2020, he spoke the truth. But ever since, he's bought into and has supported Donald Trump's lies about the insecurity of our elections. And I got no respect for the man.
All right. Anybody else want to jump in on this topic or?
No, well said,
I have to
Kevin.
jump off in a minute, but I just want to bring something. May I bring something up, or do you
Sure.
want to? Okay. You've probably read this, but we dropped a Tomahawk missile on a girls' school in Iran. 175 little girls were killed. 175. And you think about all of them had parents, all of them had families, and you can just think about the anguish they went through. And the New York Times did a pretty good background thing on this. And it turns out that our Defense Department was using data that was 10 years old in terms of where a school was or where a base was. And it sort of fits into this warrior ethos that our Secretary of War Defense, or whatever the hell he calls himself, he's kind of says, we're not getting into the legal niceties anymore. We're into death and destruction. And I'll tell you something, I read that and it just sickens me. My dad served in World War II. He was in the Gobi Desert in China, and he has some amazing experiences. Sometime I might share them here, but he always said to me that the worst thing on earth is war. And we now have a guy, a Secretary of Defense, a talk show host who likes to brag about all the death and destruction that's being rained. And you'll notice that even in Afghanistan and other situations, when this kind of thing happened, and it did, we took responsibility for it. But they're not really willing to do that. I mean, Trump actually had the audacity to say, well, maybe Iran did it to themselves. Well, Iran doesn't even have Tomahawk missiles. So it's shameful enough that this happened, but that our government is not willing to own up and say, hey, this was a terrible mistake. To me, it's just horrible.
That was devastating to see those little caskets. That I made a post about that early this week. It's disgusting, and the fact that was the worst part of it was like, we don't know. Maybe they did it to themselves. It's like you cannot. Not that I put a lot of stock in relative to like the military, like in this present form, but my grandfather was a World War II veteran as well, and you literally can't believe anything that comes out of the administration, and that's so problematic.
Since we're here, Tamaya, I know I saw your post about Congressman Landsman, and you didn't hold back. I was hoping to hear your thoughts about why you've arrived at that point when it comes to Greg Landsman. Was it because of his vote? To not put stop gaps on Trump's desire or continued military incursion or war in Iran? Yeah. But what was behind? Was that what it is, or what was behind it?
That was exactly it. I mean, I ran, served next to Greg. When we stumped together, and every other word, or every other sentence on the stump speech was, "I'm running to protect children and families." That was what he always said. He swore by that. Said that every chance he got. And you go to war to know that war is ugly, and there's he decided that. I won't get anything, although I have some thoughts about that. Try to feign ignorance on a local radio show. Politics, something about AIPAC and what AIPAC money. But the point is, I was very disappointed in that vote because, you don't care about children and families. Well, maybe you do, but just American children and families, and just say that. But don't feign ignorance or try to it was a weasel move. He didn't have to vote that way. He did not have to vote that way.
Right.
And one of the 4 Democratic legislators who voted that way. He absolutely did not have to do it, and he did it. And it's so disingenuous, and that lets me know you don't really care about
why he did it, though. You know why he did it. You know why he did it. I mean, Greg Landsman is Jewish. I mean, he did it in support of. It's not he supported the activity because he wanted to support. To vote against it would have, I would imagine, would have looked as sort of an anti-Israeli position.
But that's the thing.
I'm almost
the binary.
That's why he did it.
The binary situation. You can't. Greg has a Congress. At this point, he's a rhino. I mean, he's a dino. the Lake and Riley vote, it wasn't just that. It was just a series of votes where Greg, he goes after the low hanging fruit, like, oh, I want to vote for these things, and the more controversial and difficult votes, where he has to stand on principle and right or wrong, he fails almost every single time. And that's my challenge to him, because yes, I know Greg is Jewish, I know, but there were also other members of Congress who are Jewish who didn't vote that way. So, I'm not, and then for me, when I'm talking to people, the first thing they say is, oh, he's not Shabbat. That can't be the bar. It can't be, well, we'll just take any old thing, because he votes for some things sometimes. Like, that's how we end up with mediocre white men in office, because we set the bar so low for them. Like, at least he's not Shabbat. Like, that's crazy word to me. But for him, again, it's almost like the Target situation. For to come in our community, you play in our faces, and then you go and you take these votes that are counter to our interests. Yes, I'm in his district, but he does not represent me. And I'm very disappointed in him as a congressman. And I'll take it a step further. I have never voted for Greg. Since I've been in this district as a congressperson, I leave it blank. And I'm glad I leave it. And do I vote for the Republican? Absolutely not. Will I campaign actively for somebody else? Absolutely not. But I refuse to vote for Greg Landsman because he does not represent my interests, and he does it time and time again. People can do what they want, but I am majorly disappointed in the stances he's taken. And he feigns to be a progressive, and then he goes to Washington and does something else. And he comes here like, hey, I'm Greg Landsman. Like, I'm with you. No, he's not. Stop playing. And so we've let him get away with it for so long. And it's not just because he's Jewish. It's not just, he doesn't take tough votes. I won't talk about our service together because I don't talk about city council stuff in terms of the people I voted for, specific votes. But I'll just say it's not nothing new. And I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. I think if you listen to Landsman, though, I don't disagree with, maybe a few things, but not much of what you've said. But I think if you listen to Greg, I think Greg is he's pretty transparent. I mean, he's pretty consistent in my mind. Like, I wasn't surprised that because his votes on issues dealing with Israel have been pretty consistent. And so I knew that when it came to this vote, that he was going to vote the way that he did. That was about one of the most predictable things that you could expect coming from Landsman. And I think to expect anything different, I think people were just kind of fooling themselves with that. And he has fashioned himself as sort of being like this moderate Democrat who can meet. I mean, he's talked about being part of that moderate middle in Congress, who are able to sit down and talk about issues where the more progressive ends and the more far right ends of Congress won't. I mean, that's what Greg has tried to sell himself on, and maybe he has to feel like he has to be able to win, in this district that he's in now. I mean, look, I'll say this: people have a choice, because Greg Landsman is running in a primary. So I think those who are, if there are enough Democrats who are disappointed with Greg Landsman at this point, then you got a choice to trade up. But I think what becomes the impossible choice, if you're a Democrat, is if Greg Landsman wins the primary, you're not going to. I mean, you're not going to sit out a general election when you got Greg Landsman versus one of his MAGA counterpart. I mean, you're just not going to, because he's already in a highly at-risk state with the redrawn district. And so I think Democrats, as pissed off as you might be with him, there is a certain truth that he's not as bad as the alternative if you're a Democrat.
And so that's what I'm saying. We cannot continue to go down that he's not as bad as somebody. Like, you are just as bad. At the point where you take the same votes that you take, you are bad. And so, and I saw you, David White. It's like, that's the wrong approach. No, it's not the wrong approach. We have to start expecting more, because if we continue to expect what we always get, we're always going to get what we always got. And that's my challenge with Greg. We can't, we're accepting I can't, you know what I can't wait for, Nathan? I can't wait for Kevin. I can't wait for us to be able for women to be mediocre and run for office. That's the day that I want, that day where we could be mediocre women and run for office. We have to be great. And then you have someone like Greg who, and you can say, well, he's with us on some things, but you're just as good as a Republican. If you're not going to take the tough votes and take the stance that I want, then that your community is asking for. because Greg represents a large faction. He doesn't just represent Jewish people. I know he is Jewish, but even Jewish people that I know are conflicted and they don't rock with Netanyahu like that. So just because he's Jewish doesn't give him the, carte blanche to just be able to vote blindly with those type of interests. I think we should demand, like, oh, he's just not somebody else. That is not a sustainable way to vote. And we don't accept that from anybody else except white men.
I think that as you were talking, I realized that I need to do a deeper dive into exactly what Greg Landsman's voting record is, because now I'm curious about it. So I can't wait. I'll do that over the weekend. I want to know exactly where he stands on the votes. And I hear you, and I hear Kevin, and I hear both of you. And I think that, you can have, if you're someone who leans toward Democrat progressive policies and you want that for the first congressional district in Ohio, you can have a representative who is worse than what Greg is, in my opinion. It can be worse. And I think, unfortunately, it's not what people might want, but you have to deal with the reality of the way things are. I think Kevin brought it up. I mean, his district has been redrawn, and perhaps we are watching what a politician like Greg, who is more moderate, has to do in order to keep that seat, right? Could a progressive win that seat and hold it? I don't think so. Because could a hardcore progressive win that seat and hold it for multiple years? I don't think so. So
I don't need you to be a hardcore progressive. I just need you to be thoughtful, and I need you to be transparent, and I need you not to play in my face. Like, I'm not. I am. There's some things I'm not always going to be. I'm very, for the most part, progressive, but I just don't appreciate how he takes these votes, but when he comes to talk about it, just say what you mean and mean what you don't. Weasel with me. Don't play with me. You know who he is. You know what's going on. Like, you don't. And that's my issue. Like, people are who they are, and I treat them as such, but just don't be disingenuous in your approach. Like, no, I don't know. I don't know if you can be, I don't know if Mandani could win, Greg's district. I'm not trying to make him that person. But what I am saying is you have to be a bit more thoughtful, a bit more pensive, and you got to be better than what he has been to deserve that seat. I'm sorry. And I will not vote for him. I won't.
If again, I didn't hear the interview, but if what you're saying holds true, and I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but I'm just saying I didn't hear it. I mean, I don't think that anybody would say that maybe there's some room to grow in terms of communicating and articulating why you took these stances in a way that makes sense. But I still think, like, if you're trying to keep a Democrat in the first congressional district with all the pressures, the redrawing of the lines, some of these votes are going to look like that because, he's trying to appeal to a broader base of people and to let them know that, hey, I'll represent you no matter where you may stand. It might be, your right center. You might be right. You might be left center. You might be center. And I think there's a dance. And I think what we're watching with Greg perhaps is that dance.
And the reality is that Greg, and I don't know, I mean, I'd have no way of knowing this, but I can only guess, is that, Greg might get a decent number because of who he is. He might get a decent number of Phil Heimlichs, right? Disaffected Republicans who don't want to vote for the MAGA candidate, but who also don't want to vote for an ultra liberal progressive candidate, but who might find Landsman palatable because at least he is willing to try to engage in bipartisanship, right? And that is the type of stuff that you run into when you're in these districts like Landsman is in. And the other thing that I think is he's always going to run into Black folks who are sympathetic to what's going on in Gaza and what Israel is doing, because he's just you're diametrically on different sides of that issue. So if you're pissed off about what Israel is doing in the Gaza Strip and over there in Palestine, Greg Landsman is ultimately going to ruffle your feathers because he's not going to be on that side of that political argument because he is Jewish, and I'm not saying that Greg loves everything that Netanyahu does, but I'm saying he leans more on that side of the conversation than he does on the side that many Black people in this area, have issues with. And so that's always going to be a rub. And I think if I was running against Greg Landsman in a primary, that might be an area of sensitivity that I would try to capitalize on if I was trying to beat him. If I was trying to beat Greg Landsman, I'd be beaten at the death, in the campaign, because it's where he's vulnerable. It's a point of weakness that he has. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, and Tamaya, I'm sure there are a lot of people that feel like you. And unfortunately for Greg Landsman and maybe even Democrats, I think in this election coming up, he can't afford to have too many people like you jumping off ship. Otherwise, I think that seat's going to fall into the hands of the Republicans.
But Tamaya, let me ask you this. You were an elected official. Like, if you saw a former elected official put out a statement on Facebook, do you read those kind of things? Do they get back to you in your office? Does it sit with you in your head? Because I'm sure you saw stuff that people wrote about you. Do you analyze it? I mean, does it break the filter and come inside, and it's something that you calculate, or how does that work when you're an elected official?
If the approach is right, yes. If you start out calling me, insulting me, no, it doesn't land. But if you are thoughtful and you send me a thoughtful email or a thoughtful post, yeah, I will listen every single time. But but if it just depends on how they land. Our team used to read them. We read everything. I remember when I don't have a vote as controversial as, a war vote, but I remember when I said no to the legalization of marijuana. And it wasn't because I didn't think it should be legal. It definitely should be legal. It was because there was no retroactive components to it. But I caught a lot of emails. Like, that was probably one thing I probably got the most emails on, in terms of, like, with people being unhappy because of my vote. But then when I took the time, because I read what they said, I thought, well, let me put out something so that they could understand where I came from and genuine in my approach. And my issue with Greg is, like, it's not taking the tough votes. It's not. I understand political expediency. I understand, I understand all those things, but he did have to take those votes. It wasn't the tiebreaker. He should have thought of more. You have to think, when you're in an elected office, it's not just about you. It's about also who you represent. And you have to take all those things into consideration. And there were times where I was like, I got to think about who I represent, not just me. And so if you go in there and you present one way to win an election, and then when you go into office and you do a different thing, that's when people are sometimes disenchanted with the process. And I think that's what happened with Greg, as one way, and then did an about face once he got there. And so I just feel like he didn't have to take that vote, and that vote was crap. I mean, and then we have little girls who are getting killed in Iran because we have people who think that war is okay. And that's my issue with, like, it's not just, you don't make these decisions in a vacuum. And he did what he had to do, and as a voter, I'm gonna do what I have to do. And I think that's pretty much what it boils down to.
So has he explained that vote? If I've missed that, my apologies. It's possible, but I haven't. Has he explained his vote?
Yeah, he was on Lincoln Ware this week, talking about his vote, and didn't really make much sense. But it's what he put out there, and he was acting like he didn't know what AIPAC was and all this other jazz. And Greg is a fundraiser; he knows exactly. I mean, and to act like that was my issue too. To act like you don't know, like, sir. Who AIPAC is, what the implications are of your vote, whether that's not something that you don't think about too. You know what I mean? So that's part of the challenge too. But like I said, people can vote. I have not seen a candidate for this particular office in the primary or the general election that I'm going to vote for. So I'm probably going to leave it blank in the primary. I'm going to leave it blank in the general election.
Wow. All right. Well, I want to say true to my word. It's a Friday.
I vote means something to me, Nathan.
I understand. I respect it. But thank you for talking. I saw that. I was like, oh, this is hot. We got to get her on. And I want to hear her thoughts about this when we get a chance to. And we've got other topics, but we'll get to them next week. I want to preserve and respect everybody's time. It's a Friday. I really appreciate the crew of Phil and Laketa had to jump off, but I thank you, Tamaya. Thank you, Kevin, as well. The voice of reason. To the audience, appreciate you as well. And again, if you're just joining us, a little snafu on my end with the technical aspect of Restream. It wasn't allowing me to put your chat up. Sometimes you see it on the lower third and we can read and respond to it. So it should be taken care of by next week.
Let me just say too, because I saw David Whitehead's comment. I vote in every single election. I have not missed an election. Only time I missed an election when I was incarcerated, and I missed that election. But I will not vote for someone who doesn't represent my interests, and I'm not going to go for the lesser of two evils or other rationale. It has to be a candidate I want to choose. If I don't want to choose them, I'm not going to choose them. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to vote. I will vote in every single election that comes my way. I want to be clear about that.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Let me just say,
yeah,
free up your schedule more for hot mic episodes. You know, you always bring good flow to the conversation, and I always appreciate, even if I don't always agree, I always appreciate how you bring the flow and the ideas, and it always makes for a good conversation. So I hope you can find more time in your schedule to join.
I know my job keeps me on the road, but you are my BFF's husband, so I love your wife is so amazing and so kind, and I love y'all Wednesday's humor. I want to say that too. Like, I really appreciate y'all. Keep up the great work. It's beautiful to see. But my travel schedule gets a little crazy with work, but I miss y'all when I'm on the road.
Yeah. And y'all keep the Ohio Kings in prayer this weekend. We got a big divisional championship game on Sunday. The only team, we've only lost to one team all season. They beat us twice. And this is the team we play Sunday. So It's in Nashville. So this is our biggest hurdle. But in our defense, the two previous times we didn't have our full roster. We'll have our full roster on Sunday.
Oh, it's about to go down.
So hopefully that'll make a difference. But I really feel like if we can get over this hurdle, we got a really good shot to make it to Atlanta for the Final Four. So just keep us in prayer this weekend and we can bring home the dub.
All right, most def. Have a great weekend, everybody. And we'll be back with you on Tuesday at 1:15 p.m.